Only Boost Mobile.
Boost Mobile?
We'll give you a free year of service.
Free year?
When you buy a new 5G phone.
New 5G phone?
Enough.
But I'm your hype man. When you purchase an eligible device, you get $25 off every month for 12 months with credits totaling 1 year of free service. Taxes extra for the device and service plan. Online only.
What's it like to care for someone who's sick? To wait for answers, to hope for healing. These are the moments our nation's healthcare teams and their patients face every single day. And it's why we do what we do. We're Siemens Healthineers, and we pioneer breakthroughs in healthcare for everyone, everywhere. Across the country, from rural communities to busy cities, our medical imaging, therapy, and laboratory solutions help providers deliver care that can be smarter, faster, and more precise. With more than 17,000 employees across the United States, we're driving innovations that support healthcare teams, strengthen systems, and truly change people's lives. Because for us, it's about more than technology, more than innovation. It's a promise, built for generations. Siemens Healthineers.
Only Boost Mobile.
Boost Mobile?
We'll give you a free year of service.
Free year?
When you buy a new 5G phone.
New 5G phone?
Enough.
But I'm your hype man. When you purchase an eligible device, you get $25 off every month for 12 months with credits totaling 1 year of free service. Taxes extra for the device and service plan. Online only.
Across America, healthcare teams are managing complex demands. At Siemens Healthineers, we're here to help. With more than 17,000 U.S. team members, we're pioneering breakthroughs in medical imaging, therapy, and laboratory diagnostics, giving healthcare teams the tools to deliver smarter, faster, more precise care. Because when the right technology meets the right moment, diagnoses are clearer, treatments more effective, and lives can truly change. For us, it's more than innovation. It's a promise built for generations. Siemens Healthineers.
Hello, I'm Sarah.
And I'm Toby.
And welcome to the Whispering Woods Extra. This episode is all about
Alse Young.
Yes, Alse Young, a witch I'd never heard of. I really wanted to include this story because... Anyway, I'm not going to say that. I'm going to let you listen to it first. We'll get straight into it. Are you ready? For the story?
Yes, I am.
On a late spring day in 1647, a woman named Alse Young of Windsor, Connecticut, was led to the gallows in the town of Hartford. Her death on May 26, 1647, marked the first recorded execution for witchcraft in the American colonies. She was hanged at Hartford's Meeting House Square, then the town's communal green, now the site of Connecticut's old state house. Little was documented about her trial or final moments, but Alse Young's fate would quietly usher in a dark chapter of fear in New England, occurring 45 years before the infamous Salem witch trials seized public attention. Though largely forgotten in popular history, the case of Alse Young was a portent of the witchcraft persecutions to come. Connecticut's own witch trials spanned the decades prior to Salem and claimed multiple lives. Yet they remained sparsely recorded and were long shrouded in silence. Alse Young's story emerges as a somber, real-life tale of superstition, fear, and injustice in 17th century America. 17th century New England was a deeply religious society that believed wholeheartedly in the reality of witches and their pact with the devil. Colonial laws reflected this fear. By 1642, the Connecticut colony had made witchcraft a capital offence, punishable by death. These early laws were rooted in scripture. The colonists invoked the Old Testament injunction, "Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live," as literal justification for executing suspected witches. Connecticut's code, closely modelled on Massachusetts Bay and English precedent, left no doubt that Satan's servants were to be dealt the ultimate punishment. Puritan settlers interpreted misfortune and evil through a spiritual lens. If crops failed, livestock sickened, or children died unexpectedly, many were quick to suspect the hidden hand of a witch. Ministers preached that the devil could grant witches power to harm others in return for their soul, and this terrifying prospect led communities to be watchful of any signs of unnatural mischief. Early cases in Connecticut reinforced these beliefs. In 1648, just a year after Alse's execution, a young servant woman, Mary Johnson of Wethersfield, was tortured in jail until she confessed to entering into a compact with the devil, a crime for which she was subsequently executed. Such confessions, however coerced, convinced the Puritans that witches lived among them. The authorities saw it as their God-given duty to root out this threat. By formal statute and fervent faith, the colony stood ready to purge any hint of witchcraft. Alse, sometimes recorded as Alice or Asher Young, was an ordinary inhabitant of Windsor, one of Connecticut's early river towns. Born in England around 1615, she emigrated during the Great Migration and settled in Windsor in the 1630s. Alse married a carpenter, John Young, and together they owned a small parcel of land along Windsor's Backer Row and farm plots by the river. The couple had one child, a daughter named Alice, born in 1640. Having only a single child was somewhat uncommon in a community where large families were the norm, and this fact would later take on an ominous correlation in the eyes of her neighbours. By all surviving accounts, Alse Young lived an unremarkable life in Windsor until the events that led to her accusation. She and her family may have been seen as relative outsiders in town. Historians note that the Youngs' homestead was among a cluster of families from a different English background, the Tinker family sisters, who left Windsor not long after Alse's execution. This hints that the Youngs' origins set them apart from the majority of Windsor's founding settlers. We don't know if personal feuds, gossip, or some local quarrel primed Alse for suspicion. What we do know is that by the mid-1640s, trouble was brewing in the Connecticut River Valley that would put a target on her back. 1647 proved to be a devastating year for Windsor. Historical records indicate that an epidemic, likely influenza, swept through the town, taking lives at an alarming rate. In that single year, Windsor saw 27 burials, a death toll over 4 times higher than the year before. No rank or family was spared. 2 of Reverend John Warham's children died, as did a child of Dr. Bray Rossiter, the town's physician. Prominent lawmakers and church members lost relatives to the sickness, despite their prayers and all the remedies the community could muster. Such widespread calamity in a God-fearing town demanded an explanation. To the 17th century Puritan mind, it seemed clear that divine anger or diabolical forces must be at work. Either God was punishing the community for hidden sins, or Satan had sent a witch to wreak havoc among them. Elsie Young's immediate neighbours were among those hardest hit by the pestilence. Thomas and Anne Thornton, who lived next door, lost 4 children in the space of that year. One of the Thornton daughters, Priscilla, lay on her deathbed and was said to murmur that she had been much troubled by Satan. I find Christ is too hard for him. These haunting words, recorded later by Reverend Cotton Mather, suggested to Pia's ears that the devil himself stalked Windsor during the epidemic. In the grief-stricken aftermath of so many funerals, villagers began to seek a scapegoat for the tragedy. Suspicion naturally drifted toward anyone who seemed untouched by the disease. People could not help but notice that Elsie Young's one child survived the epidemic, while so many of their own children perished. Why had the Young household been spared the worst of God's fury? Some neighbours lightly questioned whether this Windsor woman had been sheltered by unholy means. Prejudice of the time further fanned the flames of suspicion. Elsie had borne only a single child, and in that era, a woman's fruitfulness, or lack thereof, was often subject to harsh judgment. A long-standing folk belief held that a woman with few or no children might grow envious of her more fertile neighbours and could be tempted into witchcraft out of jealousy. This misogynistic stereotype cast childless or less fertile women as potential agents of Satan, embittered by their condition. Elsie Young's family size fit that unfair profile. As panic and superstition gripped Windsor, such details took on outsized significance. Grief, fear, and age-old biases were converging, and Elsie was about to pay the price. Exactly how Elsie Young came to be accused of witchcraft remains a mystery. No detailed court records from her case have survived. What little we know comes from fragmentary notes and later speculation. Sometime in early 1647, Elsie was arrested and arraigned in Hertford on charges of witchcraft. Given the turmoil of the epidemic, one theory is that Connecticut's leaders, pressured by prominent families whose loved ones had died, felt compelled to identify and punish a culprit for the community's suffering. The death and despair had reached even the elite families of the colony. In such desperate circumstances, it's conceivable that the authorities scapegoated Elsie Young to calm public fear. As one historical analysis suggests, a member of the colonial magistracy may have organised for someone to be hanged as a witch, essentially at random, to satisfy the clamour for justice. If true, Elsie was the unlucky target of that grim calculus. However the process unfolded, Elsie Young was indicted, tried, and condemned to death by the Connecticut court in the spring of 1647. No transcripts of her trial, if any were made, are known to exist. We don't know if any neighbours spoke against her, or what evidence, if any, was presented, or whether Alse herself maintained her innocence to the end. The Puritan courts of the time often relied on testimony of unexplained illnesses, livestock deaths, or fits suffered by accusers. Any occurrence deemed preternatural might be blamed on a witch. It's possible that in Alse's case, the cluster of child deaths around her, coupled with the fevered atmosphere of the epidemic, was taken as sufficient proof of maleficum, harmful magic. There is no record of any confession by Alse Young. Unlike the later Salem trials, Connecticut in 1647 left behind no pamphlets sensationalizing the proceedings. All that remains in the written record are 2 terse diary entries that testify to her fate. Contemporary observers noted Alse's downfall in spare, unsettling words. John Winthrop, governor of the Massachusetts Bay Colony, made a brief note in his journal. One of Windsor was arraigned and executed at Hartford for a witch. The blank in this entry suggests Winthrop either forgot Alse's name or deliberately omitted it, a telling indication of how routine or how secretive such an event may have been at the time. In Windsor, town clerk Matthew Grant recorded the execution in his diary with equal bluntness. And the date May the 26th, 1647, he wrote, "Alse Young was hanged." Those few words, rediscovered in the 19th century, confirm that the execution took place and marked the tragic end of Alse's life at approximately 32 years of age. On the day of the execution, Alse Young was likely led out in front of the Hartford meeting house, where a gallows stood near the jail on the public square. There, in the presence of whatever magistrates and townsfolk gathered, the sentence was carried out by hanging. No details survive of the scene, no recorded last words, no description of the weather or the crowd's reaction. The truth is lost to time. What is certain is that Alse Young met her end as the first person in colonial America to be executed for witchcraft. In that somber moment, fear and superstition prevailed over a human life. The community perhaps felt a grim sense of relief or divine retribution as her body swung from the gallows. But if they hoped that sacrificing Alse would banish the evil among them, they would soon find otherwise. Alse Young's execution did not put an end to Connecticut's witch fears. Instead, it opened a tragic chapter that would continue for years. In the wake of her hanging, an uneasy quiet must have settled over Windsor. The surviving members of Alse's circle soon dispersed. Her widowed husband, young John, sold his remaining land in Windsor by 1649 and left town, resettling in Stratford, Connecticut. Interestingly, he was accompanied or later joined there by Thomas Thornton, the bereaved neighbour who had lost his children. Despite the grim events linking them, Thornton and young John remained friends. A 1652 letter from Thornton to the future Governor Winthrop Jr. about John's health is the only primary document proving that John and Alse were indeed husband and wife. It appears that life in Windsor had become untenable for them after the witchcraft episode. Other relatives or associates of Alse, such as the Tinker family women, also departed Windsor within a few years of 1647, suggesting that the shadow of the witch accusation cast a long shadow over those connected to her. In the broader context, Alse Young's ordeal was the first act in what some historians call the Connecticut witch hysteria. Over the next 15 years, Connecticut authorities would accuse dozens more and execute at least 10 other suspected witches, 9 women and 2 men. Among them were Mary Johnson in 1648, who, as noted, confessed to witchcraft under duress. Joan and John Carrington, a married couple hanged in 1651. Goodwife Bassett of Stratford in 1651. Goodwife Knapp of Fairfield in 1653. Lydia Gilbert of Windsor in 1654. And in 1662, during a particularly intense outbreak of accusations known as the Hartford Witch Panic, Nathaniel and Rebecca Greensmith, Mary Sanford and Mary Barnes. It was a slow drumbeat of fear and death, decades before Salem's frenzy, often handled quietly by the courts and town elders. Connecticut's witch trials never reached the scale of Salem's 1692 panic, partly because the colony's leaders grew more sceptical over time. Governor John Winthrop, Jr., starting in the late 1650s, took steps to raise the standard of evidence and restrain witch prosecutions. But in those early years, from Alse Young's hanging in 1643 through the early 1660s, the fear of witchcraft ran hot. Unlike the Salem witch trials, which were widely publicised and later became infamous, the Connecticut witch trials remained a quieter, often hidden history. Colonial officials in later years seemed reluctant to discuss or dwell on what had happened. The sad chapter that began with Alse Young was largely swept under the rug as time went on. By the 18th century, the episode was all but forgotten in the public mind. For generations, Alse Young's name barely appeared in conventional histories. It survived mainly in musty archives and local lore, a ghostly footnote to the story of early New England. Yet the personal legacy of Alse's case did live on in at least one respect: the stigma attached to her family. Remarkably, Alse Young's daughter, Alice Jr., faced witchcraft accusations of her own about 30 years later. Now married and living in Springfield, Massachusetts, the younger Alice Beeman Young was rumoured to be a witch in the late 1670s, not long after her husband's death. Neighbours even slandered her son as the witch's child. However, this time cooler heads prevailed. Alice Jr. firmly denied the allegations as baseless slander, and she was never formally charged or tried. The shadow of her mother's fate had not entirely dissipated, but society was slowly turning away from witch hunting by then. The stain of Alse's conviction had indeed touched her daughter's life, echoing the generational trauma of being branded a family of witches. One by one, the old Puritan superstitions began to fade as the 17th century waned, and the last witch trial in Connecticut occurred in 1697, with the accused acquitted. A memorial brick in Windsor, Connecticut, now bears Alse Young's name, a quiet tribute to New England's first witch trial victim. After more than 3 centuries of silence, Alse Young's story has finally been brought back into the light. In recent years, the people of Connecticut have sought to acknowledge and atone for this early injustice. On February the 6th, 2017, nearly 370 years after Alse was hanged, the town of Windsor's council formally exonerated Alse Young, along with Lydia Gilbert, another Windsor woman executed for witchcraft in 1654. The resolution declared that these women were innocent of the charges that condemned them. That spring, on the anniversary of Alse's execution, Windsor held a solemn ceremony to memorialise her and other victims of the colonial witch trials. Attendees laid flowers and stood in reflection by a brick engraved with Alse's name near the town hall, ensuring that she would be remembered not as a witch, but as a wronged member of their community. The movement to reclaim the history of Connecticut's accused witches extended beyond Windsor. In May 2023, the Connecticut General Assembly unanimously passed a resolution officially proclaiming the innocence of all those convicted of witchcraft in the colony from 1647 to 1697. This long-awaited action, though symbolic, was an important public acknowledgement that the witch trials were grievously unjust. Modern Connecticut thus joined Massachusetts, which had earlier reversed many Salem convictions, in formally apologising for its witch trial era. For Alse Young, it meant that her name was finally cleared by the very society that once condemned her.
Only Boost Mobile.
Boost Mobile.
We'll give you a free year of service.
Free year?
When you buy a new 5G phone.
New 5G phone?
Enough.
But I'm your hype man. When you purchase an eligible device, you get $25 off every month for 12 months with credits totaling 1 year of free service. Taxes extra for the device and service plan. Online only.
Across America, healthcare teams are managing complex demands. At Siemens Health and Ears, we're here to help. With more than 17,000 U.S. team members, we're pioneering breakthroughs in medical imaging, therapy, and laboratory diagnostics, giving healthcare teams the tools to deliver smarter, faster, more precise care. Because when the right technology meets the right moment, diagnoses are clearer, treatments more effective, and lives can truly change. For us, it's more than innovation. It's a promise built for generations. Siemens Health and Ears.
I really wanted to include this because I wanted to know more about the Puritan times and the witches. Because one of my favourite films about witches is the one called Witch with the 2 V's. And you've never seen it, you probably...
How do you spell witch with 2 V's?
Well, it's just done like 2 V's.
Yeah.
And in that film, they are Puritans who get banished. I'm not going to say any more than that because people may want to watch it and they haven't seen it yet. And they get banished and stuff goes on. And I was like, I really want to know about some Puritan witches and what happened. So that's why we ended up with this story.
Yeah. I don't really know of any other witch characters apart from...
Well, you know...
Harry Potter and all that.
Yeah. Puritan... During those times, the Puritans really saw the devil everywhere. They really did. And witchcraft everywhere. And you think if you got banished from your settlement, there's no way you're going to survive on your own. If your family was pushed out, you'd be isolated in this massive country, nobody around you. You'd go crazy.
Where?
It's in America.
I'd build a city.
You would. You'd build your own army, wouldn't you, love?
Yeah. Well, that's the end of this episode. I hope you enjoyed and we'll catch up with you again soon.
We will indeed. We will catch you again on Sunday. Take care, everyone.
Goodbye.
Boost Mobile.
Boost Mobile.
We'll give you a free year of service.
Free year?
When you buy a new 5G phone.
New 5G phone?
Enough.
But I'm your hype man. When you purchase an eligible device, you get $25 off every month for 12 months with credits totaling 1 year of free service. Taxes extra for the device and service plan. Online only.
I had that dream again. My small business needs IT help, but I don't use LinkedIn. And I hire wrong. So then I'm doing IT, and when I go to plug the servers in, they become sentient. And they won't let us access our network unless we forward their chain emails and memes to more and more and more people, and then I wake up.
Don't let hiring nightmares ruin your dreams. LinkedIn Jobs' new AI assistant finds and invites best-fit candidates to apply, so you can discover talent you may have missed. Get 50% off your first job post at linkedin.com/Pandora offer. Terms and conditions apply.